So describe the emotion in the passage. Share some of the emotion and some of the imagery that's jumping out to you in the passage. What's the overall feel or emotion of that passage?
It's a desolation message, isn't it?
Right.
It's
pretty miserable, isn't it?
saying, hey, I'm going to send on you what you feared most.
Yep.
Devastation.
Basically.
It's, you're going to receive punishment.
Yeah, the wrath.
Because you're not listening, isn't it? Any passages in any little bits in there that seem a bit odd or don't make much sense? I think there were lots there that I've had to think about quite a bit.
The cow and the sheep.
About the curd and the honey?
Yeah.
So I think what that's describing, I had to think about that and actually look up a few other people's opinions too, that there's such devastation in the land that so many people get killed and destroyed that it's totally depopulated. So very few people remain. So even the animals that are remaining and the bees that are remaining have way more supply than is needed for the population.
It's interesting in that verse 21, it says, Amen.
Yes.
Doesn't say men, it says Amen.
So it's interesting, there's probably a lot that can be drawn out, but let's just get the overall emotion. This is a passage where punishment's coming, wrath's coming, desolation's coming. So what's the key theme then? The key theme is, because Ahaz rejected God, he wouldn't trust God, there's going to be judgment against him and his people. There's going to be consequences. So that's all very well. That was over 2,500 years ago. What does it matter? But now if you've got that far, the next question shouldn't be that complex. So how can that passage speak to us today? How can it speak to me today or us in general today?
Well, we're the same. There are so many that just don't want to know. And I think, I remember Isaiah was told in the beginning of his prophecy that people were actually going to turn their back on him.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to remain steadfast to the Lord, which was incredible for him.
Yeah.
So he had a really, really tough call, but it's the same as today.
It's the same, and it's getting more so every day.
And so, although we can't speak for other people, we can speak for ourselves at least, can't we? If we don't listen to what God's saying to us, there are going to be consequences. And I guess taking it a step further, how does God speak to us today most clearly? Well, I guess it's different people. This is what I think is most clear anyway.
Through His Word.
Through Scripture.
Yeah.
So actually how we should be living our lives and aligning our lives is there in Scripture. If we're not listening to that, there are going to be real consequences. So a passage that seems really dark and negative and doesn't make a lot of sense, working through sort of a process like this, you can get somewhere where it actually can have personal meaning today.
And this, I just want to bring out something too, that this passage really helps you understand the importance of leadership as well, because it's Ahaz who's making these decisions and
A lot of people are affected.
yeah, and it's affecting the whole nation, and it, in the New Testament it talks about how that's still the case, that our leaders have a big impact on our lives, and so we should pray for them as well.
Which is what's happening overseas with countries like Venezuela.
Yeah.
But it's also happening here too. We've got elections coming up on Saturday.
It's important,
And
isn't
they
it?
have two different camps.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
They're distinct camps, irrespective of which way you feel. They're two distinct camps.
So it's important to hold leaders to account. Another thing which is worth also thinking about is this is a message to Judah. And Judah's a bit different, say, than a modern day country in that Judah was specifically God's people. So if we're going to translate that to today more closely, who's it aimed at? The church. And so God's message is specifically important to the church to not lose trust in Him. Okay, so let's go through the next one, which is Amos 1-2. So this is a pretty negative passage too, and just do this in your own, each individually. Read through Amos 1-2, and then there's 3 questions that I think might be worth writing out an answer to, and then you can share your thoughts.